dudes, how you doing? I hope you're having a goddamn great day. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be discussing an updated version of what Daniele De Rossi and AS Roma have been doing over the last, 2 months or so that he's been in charge. And they have altered and changed formations and all that good stuff. So if you guys haven't seen the first video, I will link it for you at the end of this one. They still use that 3-4-2-1 system. It's a very good, effective system, and he has used it. I think against Fiorentina, they used a back three system. So it is very effective. So go ahead, check out that video. And of course, in that video, I also discussed the 4-3-2-1 as well. It's a slightly more of an alterated back four type system. Very similar to the back five system that they use. But nonetheless, you can go ahead and use it. They have also tended to use that very effectively. But for today's video, we are here to discuss the 4-3-3 Roma tactics. Now, like I say, they have been alterating formations. I think De Rossi is more or less trying to tinker and see what suits this side, what doesn't really. And he may have stumbled across something very good with the 4-3-3. I think they've got the personnel to make sure it works out very well. They've got the players that can, effectively find the best out of themselves in their specific position. So again, it can work out very nicely for the side. If you guys can, please don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe if you are new, and of course hit the bell notifications and leave a comment. This is an updated version of the entirety of the tactics, so there are a few tweaks and changes that you will see throughout the course of these tactics, and of course the player instructions. So let's hop on straight into the goddamn video. Okay, so taking a look at the formation at hand, I've gone with a 4-3-3 holding, and the only real changes I have made is I've narrowed the wingers. Of course, we do tend to see quite a lot of interchangeability in that front line, the likes of El Shaarawy as well as Dybala drifting in, cutting inside, linking up very nicely with the midfield on a more narrow basis, as well as I've dropped the DM ever so slightly just to give him a bit more of a natural defensive position in the game. But other than that, it has been no major changes whatsoever, and therefore it will be one goalkeeper, two centre-backs, two full-backs, one DM, two central midfielders, two wingers, and then of course one striker. So moving on to the tactics. Now, the first major change that we see between the first video and this one is the tactical vision has changed. It's changed to wing play from standard. There are still a few key elements that I have kept the same. I still think that they use it very well and they do display these different actions more or less the same. But wing play is more or less the direction that I see De Rossi and AS Roma trying to play into. So that's why I've gone with wing play. As for the defense and the defensive style, it is still set to balance. You still want to try and channel a lot of your pressing in those central areas, force the opposition into those wider channels, and again, balance does keep the shape and the structure very nicely intact. As for the team width, it's still set to 35, with the team depth still being set to 55, of course, keeping that mid block very much intact, again, trying to flood the central areas with as many bodies as you possibly can. Onto the offense, we still see the build-up play being set to balance. You can still implement the long ball style, the fast build-up, quick approach, counter-attacking elements, or potentially the good possession-based brand of football that De Rossi is slowly trying to incorporate. So you can look to try and implement all those various different dynamic attacking outlets, and that's why I think balance suits them, because we haven't really seen one style of play consistently used. It's very much a nice mix, and to be honest, to be fair, I think it works for Roma. As for the likes of the chance creation, however, I've set it to forward runs. Now this will encourage obviously your midfield and your forwards to push up nice and high when you are in possession of the ball. It does also force them into making those runs in behind, whether it's El Shaarawy, whether it's Lukaku, whether it's Azmoun, of course, and of course also if it's Dybala. So you want to try and have those runs in behind every now and then, more so trying to pile on the pressure, have that relentless wave after wave of attacking display and outlets, and more so I think it suits how they play. As for the width, it is set to 60. Now, this is the most narrow that you can allow the team to be with the wing play sets, or the wing play tactical vision sets to on. Of course, more naturally, the wing backs, or the fullbacks, I should say, provide quite a lot of the width down either flank. But at the same time, we do see Dybala and El Shaarawy drifting into those wider channels every now and then. And I do think that maybe it could be a bit more narrow, but then it does change the outlets of the tactical vision to custom. It could be a little bit more narrow, but like a little bit, by like 5 or maybe even 10. So if it was set to 50, I think that would be perfect. But I still think that 60 provides a decent platform to replicate that realistic style of play. As for the players in the box, I have set it to 7, allowing for at least 3 players to be in and around that attacking area, whether it's likes of Pellegrini or maybe one of the fullbacks breaking forward and breaking into that attacking area. As for the corners and the free kicks, as always, it is set to 4. Okay, so starting off at the back with the instructions of the goalkeeper. Now, I've gone for Patricia. I know that's Zvila or however you pronounce his name. I know that he has also been playing of late, but Patricia I still think is the #1 keeper. So, no real changes to what his last set of instructions were. Of course, saving outside of the box, set to balance, and of course, comfort crosses, being very good and handy at claiming those aerial balls when they are whipped into the attacking area for the opposition. As for the two centre-backs, Mancini as well as Indica, now, I think under Jose Mourinho it was Smalling and so on, but with De Rossi, he wants to have that nice balance, whether it's a left-footed player on the left-hand side and a right-footed player on the right-hand side, which is exactly what Indica and Mancini tend to give the team. But the major change that we do see is the conservative interceptions. You don't want them overly engaging too much, more or less trying to keep the shape and the structure of that back line very much intact. And I think that conservative interceptions allows you to do this very effectively. As you'll see for the likes of Mancini as well, same role, same instructions. Onto the likes of Karsdorp and Spinazzola. Now, I did mention they will be bombing on forward and overlapping, creating a lot of the width down the left and the right channel. So, in order to replicate that role very effectively, join the attack, overlap, and of course, stick to position. As you'll see for the likes of Spinazzola, of course, I know he is right-footed playing on the left-hand side, but he seems to do very well out left. Anyways, he is set to join the attack, overlap, and of course, stick to position as well. Into the midfield, we've got the likes of Paredes. Now, in order for you to successfully recreate his role, of course, he is the DM. He is going to have a deeper starting position, but he does tend to get forward. He does tend to create overloads higher up the field, and you want to try and replicate that role very effectively without having your defense and your backline exploited. So, for the defensive behavior, I've set him to balance, allowing him to try and maintain the shape and the structure of that central midfield position as best as possible, or I should say the DM position as best as possible. The attacking runs is set to balance, allowing him to, yes, break forward or potentially sometimes stay back, depending on how the game and the style of the opposition is playing out throughout the course of the game. The interceptions is set to conservative. Now, I do know that Paredes does have a very aggressive mentality and style of play, but you don't want him breaking the shape, especially if he does tend to get forward. You want him to more or less try and conserve his energy, make sure that he is keeping the shape in front of that backline as best as possible, and that way it minimizes the chances of you potentially being exploited. Onto the likes of the positioning freedom, I've set it to deep line playmaker. You do want at least one of your midfielders dropping deep, dropping into those little half spaces, collecting the ball off of the backline or the goalkeeper, and then obviously looking to string the passes forward and obviously move the ball into the more attacking areas. The defensive position is set to cover the center. You don't want him drifting all over the place, like I said earlier, keeping the shape, keeping the structure, and making sure that he's not being exploited in front of that back line. So therefore, cover the center best suits him. Onto the likes of Capitano Pellegrini. Now, for his role, of course, he's a natural attacking midfielder. You do want to try and get him into those more attacking areas of the field, allowing him to use his talents to your team's best interests. For your team's best interests, I don't know. Anyways, so in order to replicate his role successfully, get forward is going to be the main aim of the game. Get forward, get into those attacking areas, link up very nicely with Lukaku, El Shaarawy, Dybala. My internet's just gone, lovely stuff. But you want him to be involved in those attacking areas as much as possible. The support on crosses, we do see Pellegrini getting into the box every now and then, and with the players in the box being set to 7, he will more so be able to break into that attacking area. But every now and then, if you are looking to try and dominate the opposition with a possession-based brand of football, you need him to have a very fluid role in the box, yes, or potentially on the outside of it, looking to either, facilitate, rotate play, and do all those good things that a natural midfielder like Pellegrini is very well known for. The interceptions will be set to normal, of course, with the fact that you will be flooding a lot of the opposition wider. You kind of do want a lot of energy, and he does produce that on a normal basis, so you don't really need it set to aggressive. And again, it does go into the fact that you don't want too much movability in that midfield, especially when out of possession. You don't want to try and break the structure as much. In terms of the defensive positioning, it's set to cover the wing, and then of course, and finally, the positioning freedom for Pellegrini is set to free roam. You want him to have that nice free ability to pick up the little half spaces, whether it's deeper or slightly further up the field, be able to create and get into those attacking areas and trying to score the goals, or, like I say, facilitate for the players in and around him. So, moving on to the right midfielder. Now, of course, Cristante is more naturally seen as a DM that can also play as a centre-back. And, we have seen the likes of Roma play a 4-2-3-1 system before, and that means that Cristante and Paredes take up the DM positions. Now, with the 4-3-3 intact, you kind of still want Cristante taking up those defensive positions and areas. So in order to successfully replicate that, you want him to try and stay back while attacking. Of course, this does mean that naturally he starts off slightly higher up the field, but he does have a bit more of a defensive awareness to his game plan. The support on crosses, just like with Pellegrini, is set to balance, allowing him to sometimes break into the box. If there is that opportunity, he will look to try and, exploit the space in the attacking area, but other times, or more times than not, he will look to try and stay on the edge of the area, rotate play, and try and facilitate a bit more. The interceptions is set to aggressive. He provides that nice aggressive bite in the midfield that you are going to be looking for, as well as the defensive positioning is set to cover the wing. Now, obviously, Dybala is more of the attacking threat higher up the field, and he doesn't always track back. I know sometimes he does, but he doesn't always. And you kind of want the right-sided midfielder to try and cover for him as much as possible. So cover the wing will be essential for the likes of Cristante. And then finally, the positioning freedom will be told to stick to position. You have the likes of Pellegrini and Paredes drifting all over the field at a higher or a lower level, and you want a little bit more structure with the likes of Cristante, kind of playing the box-to-box role in certain moments, but again, sticking to the right-hand side, making sure that his position is very much under lock, and not trying to exploit the midfield. Okay, so moving on to your left wing, Stefan El Shaarawy. So for his role, he does tend to help back quite a bit, dropping very deep at times to try and support the defense. So you'll expect him to come back on defense. The chance creation is set to balanced width. Now, this allows him to drift into those wider channels, linking up very nicely with Spinazzola, especially with the team width on the offensive end being set to 60. And he does tend to take up those more natural winger positions. I did mention this in the previous video as well. But at the same time, because you want to also try and have those more, central attacking areas taken up by your forwards, he does also tend to drift inside. And most importantly, you want to try and use his speed in behind, exploiting the opposition's defense and their space that they do leave in behind them with his pace. So therefore, getting behind is absolutely essential. In terms of the interceptions, it's set to normal, and then finally the support on crosses is set to get into the box. We do see El Shaarawy drifting all over that, more frontline area inside the attacking third as much as possible. As for the likes of Paulo Dybala, now I'd like to think of him as a chief creator in a wider position, more of a wide playmaker. Him and Pellegrini have very similar roles, but obviously Dybala, left-footed, has played on the wing before, is very good at doing so. So in this role, he is said to have a basic defensive support. So yes, like I mentioned earlier, he can drop a bit deeper and try and support the team as much as possible. But every now and then, especially if Roma are on top of things and they don't really require too many players coming back, he can look to stay forward and be a counter-attacking option, or just looking to have a slightly higher starting position for a potential counter-attack or something like that. The chance creation is set to free roam, as well as the support runs is set to come short. Now, this helps him drift central. This helps him, pick up the little half spaces. It helps him link up very nicely with the midfield, which is what we tend to do, or what we tend to see him do on a game-to-game basis. Of course, with these instructions set to be on, he doesn't naturally take up those wider positions, which does open quite a lot of space for the likes of your wing back or your right back to bomb on forward and operate in that wide space. As for the interceptions, it's set to normal. You don't always require and see him, aggressively pressing the opposition and all that good stuff. In terms of the support on crosses, you do want him to be able to break into the box, but at the same time, him linking up very nicely on the edge of the area with Pellegrini is also a very effective maneuver or style of play that you do tend to see Roma use, and you do want to try and have Dybala creating for the players in and around him. So anyways, moving on to the likes of the striker, Lukaku. Now, Lukaku, Azmoun, as well as Tammy Abraham will all have the same instructions. Stay central and be a target man. Of course, in your front line, you don't have that much physicality, so you do need your striker to bring that element to this style of play. Using his physicality, winning the aerial duels, winning the knockdown balls, linking up play very effectively with the players that will be running in and around him. And I think he does this very effectively. Now, at the same time, you do tend to see the Roma strikers running in behind. And because forward runs is set to be on, they will more naturally push up and try and exploit the space in behind if it is there. But more so, you want them to back into the opposition and link up play very nicely higher up the field. The interceptions will be set to normal. And then finally, the defensive support is set to stay forward. You don't require them to drop deep. You want them to be ready and waiting for potential counter-attack. So there you have it, people. That is how I would set out Daniele De Rossi's 4-3-3 formation. If you have enjoyed this video, as always, hit that like button down below, subscribe if you are new, comment as well, rate the system. I know that I'm pretty sure I gave the previous system a 7.5. I thought that there were a few issues with it, but this one is very much improved, and I think it has been the amount of time that De Rossi's had with the squad to try and implement his style of play quite a bit. So I'm going to give this an 8.5, slightly better than the back five and the 4-3-2-1 system. I think this system suits these players a lot more. So you guys can let me know down below if you agree with me, or maybe even if you disagree with me. If I have missed out anything, let me know down below. I will be sure to read the comments, pin it, and we can go from there. Anyways, until the next time, my dudes, I hope you have a smashing goddamn day. I'm out.